Kyogre, the sea basin Pokemon who made the very oceans themselves, is one of the most powerful Pokemon in the lore and in the competitive metagame.
Might get attacked here. Oh! Does pick up the KO onto Gengar.
A lot of damage into Kyogre, but is not going to be enough.
And here's the water spout. Wolfie Glick is your 2016 Pokemon video game world champion.
Whenever this killer whale is legal in VGC, it is dominant, being one of, if not the, most popular restricted Pokemon every single time it's around. But perhaps this super ancient Pokemon is starting to show its age. In just a few months, powerful restricted legendary Pokemon like Kyogre and Groudon will be legal for competitive play in Scarlet and Violet. So of course, instead of focusing on the tournaments I actually have coming up in the next few weeks, I've been thinking about this theoretical, hypothetical format, and I've realized something. The stars may have aligned such that Kyogre will simply not be a good Pokemon. And that potential fall from grace is what we will discuss today. But first, before you can fall from grace, you had to be there in grace in the first place. So what made Kyogre so great? Well, like its counterpart Groudon with Drought, Kyogre was the first Pokemon to have access to the ability Drizzle, which sets up the rain. Rain has a bunch of effects, like giving a 1.5 times boost to water-type attacks, cutting the power of fire-type attacks by 50%, along with some more specific uses like making moves like Hurricane and Bleak Windstorm never miss, and activating abilities like Swift Swim and Rain Dish. I have a whole long video about the history of Rain if you want to check that out. So, it starts with this great ability, and combos that with the extremely powerful offensive and defensive typing of Mono Water, and well, with legendary stats. Great bulk and an absolutely massive 150 special attack, 15 more than Flutter Mane. Combining such a huge special attack stat with Kyogre's built-in damage multiplier, Rain, has always been the core of what makes this guy so frickin' strong. But how did players use Kyogre? He's been around since the start of competitive Pokemon, so here's a quick timeline focusing mostly on the World Championships. At the first World Championships, where Kyogre was legal in 2010, Kyogre took all 4 spots in the top 4, 3 of them paired with Swift Swim Ludicolo. At the time, Choice Scarf Kyogre was extremely popular, because it made it easier for Kyogre to click Water Spout. Water Spout is a 150 base power special spread water type attack that's base power goes down as you get damaged, like Eruption. The ability to launch 150 base power attacks off of a 150 base special attack with Rain Multiplier is insanely strong, and most of the time, basically all of the time, Kyogre teams are designed around a way to make sure you can pull that off. In 2010, like we said, it was usually something like Choice Scarf. Then, the next time a Kyogre was legal for competitive play, it had access to its origin form, which gave it even more crazy boosts and an even stronger version of Rain. But, despite these changes, it mostly stayed the same. Your game plan was to figure out a way to click Water Spout as often and as effectively as possible. This time though, not all Kyogre tried to go as fast as possible. Some of them, like Wolf Glix in 2016, played a little slower and paired themselves with Trick Room, so that they could use that to go first. Later still, in Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, an archetype called Torn Ogre became popular, focusing on getting up Tailwind with Tornadus, so you can, you guessed it, click Water Spout over and over and over again. Now, I want to be clear, obviously Kyogre ran other moves, like Ice Beam or Thunder for coverage, or a second water type move that didn't rely on you being healthy, like Scald or Origin Pulse. But plan A was always Water Spout, Water Spout, Water Spout. Sword and Shield did see the rise of bulky Assault Fist Kyogre, who was designed to be Dynamaxed, which of course played differently from our usual Kyogres, but of course you can't Dynamax in Scarlet and Violet, so that won't have any impact on our analysis here. Kyogre has at least top 4 at every world it's been legal for. So is that because there was no Kyogre answers before? Well, no, of course not. Let's get into that next. But first, subscribe, or I don't know, I'll cry on you. Throughout Kyogre's history, there have been plenty of Pokemon that are good against it. It's a mono water type that relies on powerful water type attacks. So of course, generally strong grass types like Rillaboom or Amoonguss or Kartana are gonna be annoying for it, sure, but these less dedicated counters can be handled. Even resisted water spouts in rain do an insane amount of damage, and Kyogre's natural partner, Tornadus, deals huge damage to these grass types with Hurricane or Bleak Windstorm. Not to mention, Kyogre teams will often have a steel type, because rain mitigates one of steel's few weaknesses, fire. So they almost always have a good switch-in for these grass-type attacks. And of course, any strong electric type like Regieleki or Tapu Koko can be annoying, but if you manage to get speed control like your Kyogre and Tailwind, you can just blow them up before they move, or handle them with your other Pokemon. Another way people try to counter Kyogre is with dedicated checks. For example, in Series 12 of Pokemon Sword and Shield, Gastrodon was an extremely popular Pokemon almost purely because it was good against Kyogre. Gastrodon's ability, Storm Drain, redirects water-type attacks to hit it, but instead of taking damage, Gastrodon is immune and gets a special attack boost for its trouble. People would play this on teams with Pokemon that were generally weak to Kyogre like Incineroar and Groudon, punishing Kyogre players for trying to click their super scary water spouts. Another Pokemon in this vein was actually the scourge of Pokemon's Legends Arceus, Parasect. The ability Dry Skin makes it immune to water-type attacks. They heal it instead. Then, Parasect could either hit Kyogre back with super effective damage from Seed Bomb, or put it to sleep with Spore. These kinds of checks came with a real cost, though. Parasect and Gastrodon aren't exactly strong Pokemon in a vacuum, so playing them has a real cost. After all, you're gonna feel pretty silly rolling up to a match against a Dialga or something like that with a Parasect. Usually Pokemon as strong as Kyogre are only legal in restricted formats, and even then, you can only pick one or two of these powerful Pokemon to include on your team at a time. So dedicating a whole slot on your team to beating only one of these Pokemon, when there's so many options available, is a really big investment. So again, Pokemon that theoretically beat Kyogre, but with a pretty big team building cost, good, but risky. Finally, of course, you can fight Kyogre using the Weather War.
And we'll see just how it's going to work out as Guillermo is going to lean into that Pokemon, and you see that Kyogre on the field as well. And while we have the Kyogre and the Groudon on the field, you get to see that speed interaction where the Kyogre is faster. So we will see the Rain set first, and then Groudon gets to follow that up by taking it away and setting the Sun.
If you can get Kyogre and Sun with your Groudon or Torkoal or Sunny Day user or something, sure, its power will be weakened by a pretty significant amount, but remember, this goes both ways. Just like Kyogre doesn't want to end up in Sun, Groudon really doesn't want to end up in Rain. So, rather than it really being a hard answer to Rain, it's more of a dangerous dance the Sun and Rain teams have to do. To a lesser extent in older formats, Abomasnow was also used to fight Rain with Hail, resetting Kyogre's weather, resisting Water Spout, and then hitting it back with super effective damage. But Abomasnow is just kind of an awful Pokemon stats-wise, so at this point he's just too weak to be the soft Kyogre answer that he used to be. Alright, so there's plenty of Pokemon that have countered Kyogre in the past, and it was still quite strong. But these new ones, they're kinda different. From my count, there's 6 specific Pokemon that I personally think make Kyogre a lot worse. First, Ogerpon Wellspring. Ogerpon Wellspring's ability, Water Absorb, makes it immune to Water Spout, of course, just like Gastrodon or Parasect. But unlike those two, Ogerpon Wellspring is, well, you know, actually a good Pokemon, with good stabs and stats and broken moves like Follow Me. You don't feel bad for playing it, you're happy to, as opposed to feeling forced into it with Gastrodon or Parasect. And unlike those two, Ogerpon threatens Kyogre right away, being faster than it and having extremely powerful Grass-type stab moves like Hornleech or Woodhammer to threaten to knock it out. Next up we have Raging Bolt. This guy resists both Tornadus's and Kyogre's stab attacks, and its great bulk lets it take Water Spout really well, taking less than half its HP from a max special attack Mystic Water Spout in the Rain with the common Raging Bolt Assault Fest set, and it hits back for super effective damage. But the kind of crazy part is Thunderclap, which is essentially an electric type special Sucker Punch, means there's basically no scenario where you're gonna actually get hit by a full-powered Water Spout in the first place. And guys, it just gets worse for Kyogre from here. Next we have Terapagos. Now this guy is just kind of good as a generically powerful, bulky setup sweeper to use as your restricted Pokemon, since Pure Normal is actually pretty solid defensive typing, and its stats in its Terraform are, well, broken. But it also just kind of randomly dunks a Kyogre, because the first time you terrestrialize Terapagos each game, its ability, Terraform 0, removes the effects of weather and terrain on the field, wiping them all out, meaning suddenly that the boost your Kyogre was probably relying on is gone. But this still gets worse. Here's the real killers. Next up, Miraidon. This guy is a fast electric dragon type, resists Kyogre Tornadus' stabs, just like Raging Bolt, and it will blow either of them up into next year with its insanely powerful stab move Electro Drift. But there's more going on here. Since Miraidon sets up electric terrain with its ability Hadron Engine, it activates Quark Drive for future Paradox Pokemon. Pokemon like Iron Bundle, who can use its blisteringly fast Icy Wind to lower the speed of Kyogre and its partner. To outspeed max speed active Quark Drive Iron Bundle, Kyogre would need to be nearly maximum speed EVs, be timid, and be in Tailwind. But at that point, it's extremely unlikely to KO Iron Bundle in one hit, even if the Iron Bundle has no EVs in any kind of defenses. And after you get hit by one of Iron Bundle's Icy Winds, you'll be slower than it on your next turn, meaning you can use Icy Wind again, and essentially have erased your Tailwind. That is, of course, if you didn't just blow up Kyogre with your Miraidon next to it. Oh, buddy. Next, and this is the big one, we have Koraidon. Its ability, Orichalcum Pulse, sets up the sun, and this is a huge problem. But hold on, Scraw, you may be saying. Groudon has done this for years, so why is this different? I'm glad you asked. Let's look at an example. I lead Kyogre and Tornadus into your Fluttermane and Incineroar. I click Tailwind and Water Spout. You switch your Incineroar in for Groudon, setting up the Sun. In Sun, Groudon will still take a hefty chunk from Water Spout, probably about half its HP, because even with the Sun reduction on Water-type attacks, Ground is still weak to Water, so your Groudon is still in a pretty bad spot now. Now let's say it's the same scenario, but I had switched in Koraidon. Koraidon will have the Sun reduction, and since it's a Dragon type, resist the water spout, meaning even if your Kyogre was modest max special attack Mystic Water Kyogre, you'd do about 24% to me. Another scenario, let's say your Groudon gets caught in rain. I don't care if you're max HP, max special defense Assault Vest, that Groudon is still getting blown up by Kyogre. Where Koraidon, with let's say no investment in bulk at all, can take the hit on the chin and hit Kyogre back. This completely changes the dynamics of the Weather Wars. And here is the crazy thing. All of these Pokemon are extremely good at beating Kyogre, but you don't play them to beat Kyogre. You play them because they're good Pokemon. If I showed up to a mid-season showdown tomorrow with Kyogre on my team, where nobody else could use restricted Pokemon, I probably wouldn't get a chance to bring Kyogre very often, because a lot of people I'll play against will either have Wellspring Ogerpon or Raging Bolt, or both just on their team because they're just strong, efficient options. Kyogre gets hated out without people even really thinking about him. Now, you might be saying, well, wait, Scraw. A lot of these issues are things that Urshifu Rapid Strike has dealt with too, and he's still quite good. And that is true. But I'm about to say something a little controversial. While Kyogre is obviously a stronger Pokemon than Urshifu Rapid Strike, purely on raw stats and damage output, Urshifu is a more broken Pokemon. What do I mean? The reason to play Urshifu Rapid Strike, namely a powerful water-type attack that cannot be disrupted with screens or intimidate, and that ignores Protect, is very unique. There's no other Pokemon that can do something similar. So sometimes it'll be worthwhile to jump through some hoops, even when the metagame is hostile to Urshifu. While in Kyogre's case, if you just want to click a really strong stab special spread move off of a Pokemon that has broken stats, you don't have to use Kyogre. You can just use something like Calyrex or the new Terapagos. But that's just what I think. I await your comments saying that this video aged poorly but Kyogre wins a tournament. Thanks for watching, and bye.